Alright, you've made it to the fun part. Let's start learning to code. I'm so excited to see you here because now it's when things really start to make sense. Learning HTML is like building with Lego bricks. Once you understand the pieces, you can create anything. And in this lesson, we will be laying the foundation for all your future designs. Remember how HTML gives a website its structure? Think of it as the skeleton of a web page. Just like bones provide structure for a body, HTML provides structure for everything we'll build. In this chapter, we'll start by creating a simple skeleton of a web page that will become the base for all our designs as we go along. We are taking it step by step, so you feel confident and ready as we build. Earlier in the project planning chapter, we talked about what we want to make. Now we will use that plan to keep us focused and make sure our project will look exactly as we want. So let's get started and make this happen. But before we start, you need to know that coding is like learning a new language, but we communicate with computers instead of talking to people. To do this well, we need to use a language the computers understand. This is why we must learn the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Once you learn the basics, you can write code that computers understand, so they know exactly how to display your web page in the browser. So what exactly will you learn in this video? Here's the plan. First, we will talk about the HTML elements and their parts. Next, we will look at tags and learn about elements that don't have content. Then, we'll explore attributes for HTML elements, including how to write them and what they do. And finally, we will finish with an interactive exercise when you'll get some hands-on practice. Let's start with a quick comparison to something you already know, quotes in English. When you see quotation marks around text, you know it's a quote, right? HTML works in a similar way. You can easily recognize HTML code because of the tags that surround the content, like quotation marks. These tags tell the browser what type of content it is and how to display it. Okay, now look at this example of an HTML element. I used different colors to highlight parts of the code. This makes it easier to understand. Everything you see here is called an HTML element. This example is a paragraph element, a basic HTML element that lets you put text on a web page. Every HTML element has two parts, tags and content. In this example, I've highlighted the tags in pink and the content in green. Think of the tags, the pink part, as a signal to the browser that says, hey, this is HTML. The green part is the actual content that shows up on a web page. Tags surround each HTML element. There's an opening tag at the beginning and a closing tag at the end. You will see these tags are inside angle brackets. Think of them like crab claws, holding the tag name in the middle. And here's how to remember it. Opening tags have crab claws around the name, while closing tags have the crab claws plus a samurai sword, that's a slash. They show the end of the element. HTML has many different tags, and each one tells the browser what kind of content it is. Paragraphs, headlines, images, or links. But don't worry, you don't need to memorize all of them right now. We will focus on the most common tags you will use on every project. Think of these tags as the basic building blocks of your HTML structure. Alright, we already know what HTML elements look like and what the tags are. But did you know that there are HTML elements without content at all? We call them elements with self-closing tags. Their structure is slightly different. We can also call them empty elements. Let's take a look at an example, a line break element. This HTML element inserts a single empty line into text, so there's no content here. And in this case, we have a handy shortcut. We need to combine an opening and closing tag, and two become one, just like this. And please remember about space before a slash. Another great example of a self-closing tag is the input element. You will find it in every online form, like the contact form. It's an element where you put your email or name. In this example, we still have a space and slash at the end, but this time I put something more here. It contains the attribute name and value. We have an input element with an additional attribute, type, set as email. This means that this input is for typing an email address. In standard non-self-closing elements, we should always specify attributes in the opening tags. And I prepared another example for you. This HTML element has a class attribute and its value is a container. You don't need to understand what it means exactly right now. Just remember that HTML elements have sometimes attributes with values. And the element I used in this example is division. We will use it a lot in our project, but we will cover it later in the course. Okay, one more example. This time, it is an element with a self-closing tag, image. It has even more than one attribute. An element can even have several attributes. You can put some attributes inside any tag, standard or self-closing. It provides additional information about elements for our browser. Alright, let's sum up what we've learned so far. HTML elements contain both tags and content. We've got opening and closing tags around the content. Opening tags have the tag name inside angle brackets, while closing tags also have a slash. Some elements are self-closing, meaning they don't need separate opening and closing tags. They also don't have any content inside. Finally, elements can have attributes, which give extra information about how they should work. Okay, now it's time for a little exercise. In the example below, you will see 3 lines of HTML code. And each line has a small error, and your job is to find and fix each one. When you are ready, hit pause and work through the problems. Then play the video to check your answers. Great, let's go over the answers together. First line, notice we are missing a slash in the closing tag. Add it and you are good to go. Second line, this paragraph element has a class attribute but is in the wrong spot. Move it to the opening tag. And the third line, our self-closing element has an extra slash. Just one on the right is enough. Congratulations, great work fixing those issues. And that's it for our first HTML lesson. You did amazing work here. Now take a well-deserved break, grab a coffee or tea, and get ready for the next lesson, where we'll dive even deeper into HTML and start coding together in the editor. See you there! Hello! I'm happy you are here for this lesson. Now we can finally start writing some code together. I'm excited to help you with these steps and I hope you are ready too. Let's get started. But first, I will explain some theory to help you understand the code better. In HTML, we organize parts of a web page using something called the document tree. But don't worry, this isn't as complicated as it sounds. You can imagine it like a family tree where each part of the web page has its place and relationship with the others. Once we see this, setting up our HTML page will feel like putting together puzzle pieces. Let me give you an example we can all relate to. Think about when you learned how to write a letter, whether in school or when learning a new language. To make sure your letter was clear, you always included certain parts, right? You had the recipient's name, the date, a greeting, the main message, and your signature. Each part had a purpose and made the letter feel complete. And HTML documents are set up the same way. They have a standard structure with specific elements in every HTML page. So today we are going to learn these essential parts. In an HTML document, we have three main parts. First, the HTML element itself is like the envelope of our web page, wrapping everything inside it. Inside that HTML element, we have the head and body elements. Think of the head as the cover of a book. It shows details like the title, but it doesn't contain the content that the reader will actually see. Then there's the body, where we put all the content that shows up on the page like text, images, and links. And those elements structure every web page, just like the parts of a letter. Let's talk about one last part that might sound a bit technical, but is actually simple: the doctype. This part goes at the top of the page, and you can think of it as a signature. Just like signing your name shows who wrote a letter, the doctype tells the browser, hey, this document uses HTML5. That's the current version of HTML we're working with. HTML has been changing since it was first created. The most popular version now is version 5. Each version had a different doctype, but this course will only focus on the current version. But if you want to learn more about the history of HTML, please click the link below the video. And here's something interesting. HTML has a tree structure, but it's upside down. The root element is the HTML element at the top. All the other parts grow down from it. Inside the HTML element, we always have the head and body elements. As we start building our web page, you will see that each part fits into the structure just like branches on a tree. And we also need to specify the page's language in the HTML tag. We do this using an attribute. In our case, we'll add a lang attribute with the value en for English. This helps make our page accessible and tells the browser what language our content is in. Very helpful for search engines and for people using screen readers. Now that we know where the head and body sections fit in, let's talk a little more about what they do. The head section includes details about the page that aren't directly visible to users. We will add things like the title and keywords here, which help browsers and search engines understand what the page is about. And the body section is where all the visible content goes. So everything from text to images will go here, and it's what users will see on the screen. Okay, and one last thing to know before we dive in. HTML elements can contain other elements. So just like the HTML element contains both the head and body, you will often see elements with other elements inside them. This nesting is a core concept in HTML and lets us build up complex pages from simple parts. Alright, let's put this theory into action. Please open your code editor and let's set up our project together. When you open it, you will see the Explorer icon in the top left corner of the editor. Please click on it. We don't have any folders added to our editor yet where we can save our files. So let's create a new folder for our project. Click the Open Folder button, then browse the location. Find the folder with the materials you downloaded for this challenge. Then create a new folder. Click New Folder and name it Portfolio Website. Then click Open. Now you can see our folder has been added to the code editor. Next, we need to create our first file. You probably know that different files have different extensions, right? For images, it's PNG or JPG, and for compressed files, it's zip or RAR. In the case of a file containing HTML code, the extension will be HTML. So let's create this type of file. On the right side at the top of the folder name, you will find an icon for the new file. Click it, then type in the file name index.html and click Enter. Let's start coding. As we said before, we need first to tell the browser that our code is written in HTML5. So let's write doctype HTML with angle brackets and an exclamation mark on line number 1. And remember, doctype should be written in capital letters and HTML in lowercase. Visual Studio Code also offers suggestions that you can use. Instead of typing out the entire thing, you can just hit Enter when the pop-up appears, and the whole line with the doctype will be ready to go. Then we'll insert the HTML element on the following line, specifically its opening tag. Right after that, we will also create its closing tag. Click between the tags with your mouse to set the cursor there, and then click Enter to create a new line. We will now be typing the content inside the HTML element. The first element we will add is the head. Just like with the HTML element, we will add an opening and closing tag. We will leave the head element and return to it in the following video. Let's create the body element next. Remember to create the body element below the head closing tag. Finally, we need to add a lang attribute to our HTML element to tell the browser which language our content is in. So mouse over to the opening tag of the HTML element, click just after the element name, add a space, and type the lang equal to en. When we set an attribute value, we use double or single quotation marks. It doesn't matter which one we choose. What's important is that we pick one and stick with it. We don't want to mix them up. As you can see, the code editor changes color when I change one of the quotation marks to inform me something is wrong. When I fix the quotation marks, everything goes back to normal. Take a look now at the name of our open file. Next to it, you will see a white circle. That means there are new changes in our file that we still need to save. So click Command plus S for Mac or Ctrl plus S for Windows. The circle disappears and the file is saved. We are done. We wrote our first line of HTML code together. Congratulations! Before we move on, I have one more trick for you in the code editor. When you are working on future projects, I'm guessing you won't want to keep typing out the standard HTML elements over and over again. Did you know that you can quickly create an entire HTML file structure? Just look at this. I will remove the code we wrote for a moment. All you have to do is click the exclamation mark on your keyboard, Shift plus 1, and 2 suggestions will appear. Clicking 3 exclamation marks will create a doctype element for us. However, It will get even more interesting when we choose the second option, which is one exclamation mark. Click Enter and voila! We have written the entire basic structure of the HTML document. Cool, right? Okay, so here's what we completed. We learned the basic structure of an HTML document, including the doctype, HTML, head and body elements. We set up our project folder and wrote our first HTML file. We even learned a handy shortcut for creating an HTML structure in seconds. You've made a great progress, and these are real foundational skills you will use over and over. Take a moment to celebrate what you've achieved, and when you're ready, come back for the next lesson, where we'll dive deeper into the head section. I'll see you there! Hello! I'm glad to see you back for another lesson. Now we're diving into the head element. What it is, what it does, and why it's so important for your HTML documents. By the end of this video, you will know two essential head elements you can add to your code right away. Let's get started. Remember how we said that the structure of an HTML document looks like an upside-down tree? The main element is always HTML. The head and body sections are inside it. The body holds all the visible content of the website, while the head is… well, let's think of it like the settings of an app. Imagine you're using your favorite social media app. In the app, you can go to the settings area to change important options. You can adjust your notifications, choose a light or dark theme, and update your username or password. These settings control how the app looks and works for you, but they won't change the content you see, like posts or photos. And the head element works in a similar way. It contains important settings and information, but this information isn't visible on the screen. It works in the background, but it's very important. So what kind of settings can we add to the head? A great example is the title element. This title shows up in the browser tab when someone opens your web page. It also becomes the name they see when they bookmark the page. Let's see how it works. Please open the index.html file we created earlier. Your code should look something like mine. Inside the head section, let's add a title. First, set your cursor right under the head opening tag. Then, type the title opening tag and the text you want for your page title. Let's go with something like I am a coder woman. Finally, add a closing title tag. Save your file and let's check it in the browser. To see this in action, right-click the file in your code editor and select Open in Live Server. And now look at the browser tab. Do you see I am a coder woman as a title? Great! This title will also automatically show up if you bookmark the page. It's a small detail, but it's one of the first things people see when they open your website, so it's a good idea to make it clear. Now that we have our title in place, let's add another useful element to the head: metadata. Metadata includes various types of information about our web page used by browsers and search engines. This data doesn't show up on the page itself, but it helps set up the website. In the head section, we can also include other helpful resources like links to CSS files for styling, JavaScript files for functionality, or a small icon called a favicon that appears in the browser tab. And of course, we will work on it during this course. But now we will start on one specific element, metadata, called charset. It tells the browser how to handle special characters, different languages, and even emojis. Let's add it to our project now. type meta charset equals UTF-8 in your head section. Notice that this tag doesn't need a closing tag, it's self-closing. UTF-8 is a common encoding type. It supports many languages and symbols. It will meet 99% of our needs, so we will use it in our project. I know it looks weird, so let's see this in action. Let's say I want to display an emoji in the browser. Additionally, the content on my page isn't in English. It's in a language with special characters like Japanese. So I want to display the emoji with a smiley face and next to it the Japanese word for hello. I will create a paragraph element quickly and put an emoji and some Japanese characters in it. There we go. Look at the menu at the bottom of your code editor window. This is where we specify the encoding of the file we're working on. As you can see, it's set to UTF-8. This allows both the emoji and the text in a foreign language to display correctly in the code editor. And let's see how it looks in the browser. I'm clicking Open in Live Server and the text looks okay. The emoji is colorful and the Japanese text looks good. So what happens if I change the character encoding? Let's find out. Below this lesson, you will find a link to a list of available character encodings in the additional materials. There are a lot of encodings, but don't try to memorize them. There's no point. It's great to know that there are different ways to encode characters, but in 99% of cases, you will just be using UTF-8. Alright, let's say we choose ISO 88591 for Western encoding, for example. Let's see what happens when we change the char set value. Well, as you can see, nothing has changed. Why? Because in VS Code we can also specify file encoding, which is still set to UTF-8. Let's see what happens when I change the file's encoding in the editor. I select the Save with Encoding option, choose ISO 88598 and suddenly, the characters in the browser disappear and we can see only question marks. The browser doesn't recognize our characters in this encoding type and displays exclamation marks instead of them. Here is the character encoding in practice. If I change the encoding to UTF-8, everything will return to normal. It's also good to know that the Chrome browser often changes the encoding to match the content automatically. However, to ensure your content shows correctly in all browsers, remember to include this meta tag in your future projects. Okay, I can now remove the sample content. The code from this lesson looks like this. As you can see, we added two elements, title and meta with the charset attribute. I hope your code looks like mine. And remember to save all changes. Let's quickly review what we've learned. We explored the head element and why it's important. It's like the settings area for our web page, holding information that affects how the page looks and works, even though it's not visible on the page itself. We added a title element which shows up in the browser tab and becomes the name if someone bookmarks your page. We also added a meta charset tag to ensure our text and special characters display correctly across different browsers. Great work! In our next lesson, we'll start adding real content to the body of the page, so get ready to bring your web page to life. See you in the next lesson!